Hi, everybody. Brianna Whitney here, host of True Crime AZ Live. Thanks so much for joining us as always each week. And like the past few weeks, we're recording this just a couple hours before you're seeing it live on YouTube, on Roku, on the AZ Family app. But I'm watching along with you guys live. I can still answer your questions, take comments, anything. And there's a lot of cases we're going to be covering in this show specifically, more cases than we typically do. So I hope you guys have questions and want to weigh in. These are big ones happening around the country. And then a really cool interview we did with a film director making his debut on Prime Video and Apple TV with a horror film that all centers around a plot with a serial killer and a true crime podcast. Is this about me? I don't know, but we're going to get into that. We interviewed him. That's our second segment tonight. But first, we've got a slew of cases. We want to bring you a bunch of updates in our first segment tonight, True Crime Headlines. All right, so everybody's favorite murderer or alleged murderer, Luigi Manion, back in the headlines today as we are speaking, as we are recording this. I got the alert on my phone, so we just added it into the show. There's a Minnesota man who has now been arrested for impersonating an FBI agent traveling to New York to allegedly try to free Luigi from the federal jail that he has been in now for over a year. Here's what we know so far. The guy's name is Mark Anderson, 36 years old. He arrived to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn last night, claiming he was an FBI agent with a court order for Mangione's release. Now, this is according to a criminal complaint that was filed in court. Apparently, when the officials with the Bureau of Prisons asked the man for his credentials, he gave him his Minnesota driver's license. And then when they said, you're going to need to provide more than this, the paperwork he had, he just threw it at the Bureau of Prisons officials. He also stated that he had weapons in his bag, and that was part of the complaint as well. What we know is when they actually searched this backpack, he had a barbecue-style fork and a circular steel blade. Now, nobody knows if this guy had any sort of prior connection to Manion. Did he know him? Did he write to him in jail? Anything like that. All they know is that he was allegedly in New York for a potential job that didn't work out, and he was at a pizzeria before his arrest. So we don't know where this idea was allegedly born to become an FBI agent and try to free Luigi, but obviously they caught him before he was able to do so. That man now making a court appearance today, this afternoon, Thursday, on those charges. This doesn't change anything about Luigi Manion's case. He is still facing charges for killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a hotel in New York, both facing federal charges and state charges. That's just one case that we're covering tonight. 4 others on the plate. We're going to start with the next one. Ryan Wedding's arrest out of Mexico, brought here to the States to face some charges relating to an alleged drug kingpin, drug ring, and also potential murder charges. So let's get into who Ryan Wedding was. You can see him here on your screen. He was a former Olympic snowboarder. He competed in the Salt Lake Games back in 2002. But after that, it appears he really got into some criminal activity from the start. He was an Olympic athlete for Canada, kind of started in Canada and then made its way to the United States and to Mexico. So here's what we know that led up to his major bombshell arrest as being an FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitive. He was previously convicted in the U.S. of conspiracy to distribute cocaine and sentenced to prison in 2010, but he was released from prison in 2011. Well, he's reportedly been hiding out in Mexico for more than a decade. Then he ended up on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives list. You have seen that. We covered it on this show. The FBI was very outspoken about that. They had a $15 million reward for his arrest and conviction. Authorities have compared him to the modern-day El Chapo, and he reportedly moved as much as 60 tons of cocaine between Colombia, Mexico, Canada, and Southern California, all working under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. His ring was the largest supplier of cocaine to Canada, and he faces charges there too that were stemming all the way from 2015. So there are a lot of charges to possibly be facing out of Canada and also the United States. But it's not just for this drug trafficking ring. There's also murder charges that he's facing. So Wedding is accused of directing the 2023 killings of 2 members of a Canadian family in retaliation for a stolen drug shipment, and for ordering another killing over a drug debt in 2024. But this whole case really expanded recently when Wedding was indicted on new charges of orchestrating a killing of a witness in Colombia that he tried to reportedly kill so that he could avoid extradition here to the United States. So there is a lot of serious charges. they viewed him as very dangerous. The FBI put them on his list for a reason, because of everything that they believed he was capable of. They said he was hiding out in Mexico, and that is where he was arrested. So Mexican officials actually said that last week he turned himself into the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. But because he appeared in court in the United States in California this week, his attorney spoke to media outside the courthouse and said, that's not how it went down.
He didn't surrender. He was apprehended. He was arrested. And so any spin that the government in Mexico is putting on this, that he surrendered, is inaccurate. And I think if there's anybody in a position to know how his arrest and apprehension went down, it's his counsel. So those reports of what happened, that he surrendered, completely inaccurate.
All right, so that defense attorney also was kind of clearing up some other things as well. There was reporters that asked him, can you talk about the fact that he was hiding out in Mexico? That defense attorney kind of had this quip back that said, well, we have different definitions of hiding out versus living somewhere. Ryan Wedding's due back in court on February 11th. Allegedly, his trial date set for March 24th, but the defense attorney there said unlikely they would go to trial that quickly. I don't know how they would possibly get this case together that fast to be able to go do a federal trial that quickly. So likely going to be pushed back. I would not be surprised if it even starts sometime next year. But more to come on the Ryan Wedding case after his big arrest, a big win, the FBI touting for themselves to be able to check off somebody who was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. All right, next case, the Tepe murder case out of Ohio. You guys know this case because we covered it on the show recently. We have learned a lot more. This is about Spencer and Monique Tepe, an Ohio couple. Spencer was a well-known dentist in the Columbus area, his wife Monique, and they had 2 young kids. Well, they were murdered at the end of December, allegedly at the hands of this guy on your screen, Monique's ex-husband, Michael McKee. Now, we knew that there was a person of interest in the case. There was this kind of surveillance footage that we had seen of a hooded figure that was walking in the area. And we kind of knew as this unfolded that authorities were able to link Michael McKee's vehicle to the area of the crime scene. But now we're learning a lot more about what witnesses told police after McKee was arrested and about this investigation. Very concerning. So here's what we know. Monique and Michael were not married very long. They got divorced back in 2017. And then, of course, she met Spencer and went on to start a family. Well, in this new court paperwork, there are accounts from friends, witnesses that said there was a pattern of abuse and numerous threats on her life during their marriage from Michael McKee to Monique. One witness told police that McKee said he could, quote, kill her anytime, would find her and buy the house right next to her, and that, quote, she will always be his wife. Concerning in and of itself. But then there's actual information that shows Michael McKee was at the Tepe home just 3 weeks before they were killed. So here's what we know from the court paperwork. On December 6th, 3 weeks before the murders, the Tepes were in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. And the affidavit shows that Monique left early in the second half, saying she was upset about something involving her ex-husband. Well, surveillance footage on that same day, December 6th, showed McKee was seen on security video entering the Tepe's home. Now, we don't know if he had access through a code, if they knew he was in the area, or what was going on, but it's likely those 2 events, her being concerned about something and him being seen on the surveillance footage going to the home, entering the home, were related. And that was just a few weeks before they were killed. Another witness told police that Monique said her ex-husband choked her and forced unwanted sex. And the affidavit also details how they tracked down Michael McKee. We'd seen that person of interest video. We knew that there was a car involved, but this is new information. His silver SUV had distinct features they were able to see: a stolen Ohio license plate and an Arizona license plate. I didn't know that until I read the court documents. That exact car with those distinct features was spotted in an area near the crime scene multiple times. And when they traced it back, it came back not only to his name, but also an address in Rockford, Illinois, which is where McKee was working as a vascular surgeon. And that's where he was arrested more than a week later. Now, this is a little bit different as well. McKee faces 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary. So you're probably thinking, why is he facing 4 counts of murder when there are 2 victims? And I had to look into this too, because it's not something that I've seen before either. So in Ohio, it all comes down to how they charge things there and their law. In Ohio, they're charging for 2 counts specifically of premeditated murder, meaning that there was clear planning and calculation, which in Ohio can be its own charge. But then they're also charging for felony murder. The reason they're able to do that is because the deaths happened in commission of another felony, which in this case was the aggravated burglary charge. Apparently in Ohio, you can file both of those and then leave it up to the jury to decide. So let's say they don't find that there was enough evidence to convince them or to prove premeditated murder, but they found that there was enough evidence to prove that there was felony murder during an alleged burglary. That would then guarantee that Michael McKee was still convicted of murder, almost like a fallback charge. And that's not something that we have in every situation. It's not something we typically see here or ever in Arizona, where there's multiple murder charges for one victim. But that's how they're doing it there. Basically, it's going to be up to the jury, and then that will come out in how he's sentenced if he's convicted. So what's he looking at for that too? He pleaded not guilty. If convicted, he faces a minimum life sentence with the possibility of parole after 32 years, but he also could face a maximum, which would be life in prison with no parole. We'll stay on top of this case as we learn more. To our next one tonight, the Bryan Kohberger case and the Idaho 4 murders. And you all are no stranger to what happened here. Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to brutally stabbing 4 students in Idaho, who then we watched this all unfold fairly recently last year in a plea hearing, in a sentencing hearing. The families of these 4 young victims going in on Bryan Kohberger, and he is in life in prison with no possibility to appeal. So because we didn't see the trial, we didn't get to hear all of the details. And basically what's happening now is officials in Idaho are releasing documents one by one through either public records requests, or they're actually just posting them onto their websites for people to see, which is something we also typically don't see. Well, in this case, we now are learning more about the autopsies of each of the victims, each of those students. And I felt like it was important to shine some light on some of the details we've learned, because to fully understand how brutal these crimes were, these murders were, you have to hear about the injuries and the extent of overkill that happened. And this is something that we're learning in these newly unsealed court documents in a filing by the prosecution. I want to give credit so that you know where this is coming from. This part was not posted publicly online. This first was obtained through Sarah Irish, who is somebody who monitors court documents, puts in public records requests, often works with media. I was able to confirm that from the investigative reporter through the Idaho Statesman, and I have a copy of this too. So I was able to review this, and I want to go through some of the new findings in each of the autopsy reports from the victims. I want to start with Kaylee Gonzalez. She was one of the victims found upstairs with her friend Maddie. Kaylee had at least 38 stab wounds. Most of those were to the scalp, face, and neck. These injuries included her teeth and tongue too. And while the cause of death for her was sharp force injuries, the autopsy also noted blunt force injuries of the head and asphyxial injuries, so suffocating or choking. She was found next to Maddie Mogan. That was the second victim. They were both killed upstairs. Maddie had at least 28 stab wounds, most, again, similar to the scalp, face, and neck, and then upper extremities, which is horrific. And it's likely that Kaylee was probably killed first and then Maddie. She had, as most of it was to her scalp and face, the autopsy for her also noted that she had wounds of the lung and the liver, which also contributed to her death. Ethan Chapin was the third victim. He was dating Xana Kernodle. He was stabbed 17 times, mostly to the scalp, face, and neck as well, and the upper extremities, but he had significantly less injuries than the 3 girls. There's a couple reasons that could be for that. One, it's potentially that Bryan had a lot more angst and anger against 3 women just due to how he felt about women than Ethan Chapin. Ethan was also asleep in his bedroom at the time. And last but certainly not least, Xana Kernodle, who was dating Ethan. Now, Xana is a little bit of a different story here because she had the most horrific injuries because she was awake when this happened. So as the court documents show and the evidence show, when Bryan Kohberger was killing Kaylee and Maddie upstairs, Xana heard something and went to go see what was going on. The court documents, the police reports show that she encountered Bryan Kohberger. He likely walked downstairs with her, and that's where Dylan Mortensen, one of the roommates, heard something like, "I'm here to help you. It's going to be okay." Xana then fought back after she was started as Brian Kohberger started to stab her. That's why her injuries are so awful. She interrupted Kohberger's attack, and it seems that made him even more angry. She was stabbed at least 67 times. This was basically all over her upper extremities, her hands, showing that she fought back hard. She had stab wounds everywhere: her scalp, face, neck, chest, back, upper and lower extremities, her skull, and her arms. And there was the most blood loss because of that, given the fact that she was horrifically stabbed like that. She was found next to Ethan, but in the doorway area, and that's likely because she was trying to get out and just couldn't. So the overall conclusion from this court filing by the prosecutors and the autopsies is this: everyone was in their bedrooms when they were attacked except for Xana, who was the only one to move and stand upright while she was actively bleeding. There's been a lot of people on social media, a whole loud other side of things that says Kohberger didn't do this, he didn't do this alone, etc., etc. This court filing says there is no physical evidence to exclude a single perpetrator causing these deaths, which means that Brian Kohberger, according to the evidence, is the only person who could have caused these deaths to these 4 victims. One more case for you tonight, this one out of Oregon. I had to do some research on this as well. The Starry Night murderer arrested again. Well, who's the Starry Night murderer? This all started back in the 1990s. I'm going to take you through this because it's a little complicated, but there's still some mystery that shrouds this case. So this is back out of the 90s. 71-year-old Larry Hurwitz is back behind bars. He became known as the Starry Night murderer because in the 90s, and there he is right there, he owned the Starry Night Concert Hall in Northwest Portland. And in January of 1990, his employee, Tim Moreau, who is 21 years old, disappeared after supposedly having a meeting with Hurwitz that night. Well, family immediately suspected foul play, but there was no movement in this case for a long time, 8.5 years, until a tax evasion case in 1997 that led to more investigation. And that's when a fellow employee, George Casanola, confessed to his involvement in Moreau's death and said that he did it with somebody else, the owner, Larry Hurwitz. Well, their motive: Moreau was going to expose a scheme they were running at the club selling counterfeit concert tickets. Casanola pleaded guilty to the killing. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He testified against Larry Hurwitz, the Starry Night murderer. Casanola said he had dug the grave in advance and had driven Moreau's car to the airport after they strangled him. Well, Hurwitz pleaded no contest to aggravated murder. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but at sentencing, he still denied having any involvement in this murder. But he agreed to help authorities find Moreau's body, which he said was wrapped in garbage bags and buried in a rural wooded area. But the thing is, they never found Moreau. They never found where his body was. And Hurwitz never claimed he actually did the killing, just that he could lead investigators to the body. So he was released from prison in 2008 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. And one journalist in particular in Oregon never stopped taking his eye off Hurwitz because he felt that there was always going to be more to the story, that Hurwitz was going to be a repeat offender, that maybe things would all tie together. Would they find Moreau eventually? Would there be other mysterious things that kind of surround the Starry Night Club? He thought so, and he was basically right. So Jim Redden worked for several papers in the area along with the Portland Tribune. He always suspected Hurwitz would get arrested again, and this began years ago in 2019. He was arrested for DUI and drug charges in a wild drug trafficking arrest.
He was arrested in California on a drug trafficking charge down in Huntington Beach, California, with 4 kilos of cocaine and $320,000 in cash, and was convicted on that.
So he's convicted on that. He serves more prison time. Then he's released from prison again. And now in 2026, boom, arrested again last Friday. This time it's for an alleged domestic violence incident against a partner. The charges include harassment, 4th-degree assault charges, and a parole violation hold. Now, Jim Redden has been following this because he's still been investigating Hurwitz, and he thinks there could be more to the story.
On the surface is a much smaller arrest. It's domestic violence, but I don't think that the full story has come out yet. The investigation is ongoing, and there could be some connections to previous cases.
So I was looking at some of the investigating that Redden has done on Hurwitz, and there was something else that I found too. According to Redden's longtime reporting, Moreau is not the first Starry Night employee to disappear under a suspicious circumstance. One of the club's former security guards fled in 1983 after allegedly stealing money and drugs from Hurwitz's office. Well, Hurwitz was detained and questioned by law enforcement at the time about allegations he plotted to kidnap the missing employee's parents and hold them for ransom. Nothing ever came of that. I don't think they ever found that security guard. They never found Moreau's body either. So when Redden says that they're still investigating things and there could be, parts of these cases that connect to each other even decades later, he's possibly right. So there's more to come on this for sure. Hurwitz, as far as the domestic violence charges go, is scheduled to appear in court on February 4th, and then his trial for these charges is set for March 19th. So will we learn more about what happened recently and if that's connected at all to these past issues, past disappearances, past death? Possibly, and we'll stay tuned on that for sure. Coming up next, a big interview with a director making his feature film debut on Prime Video and Apple TV. It's a horror film about a true crime podcast. Yeah, we're going to tell you more about it coming up. All right, this is a really cool interview. I'm excited to bring it to you guys. There is a new horror film, out on Prime Video and Apple TV called The Vindicator. Now, I will be the first to admit I am not a horror person at all, which people find very strange, that I love true crime, don't like horror. To me, they're very different, but this one crosses over in my worlds. This is called The Vindicator. The plot is a serial killer hijacks a live true crime podcast and forces the hosts into these nightmarish tasks that expose their darkest secrets. And if they do it right, it offers them the opportunity to unmask who the killer is. It's a very interesting plot. I've watched about half of the movie so far, and it is really interesting. It all takes place in Arizona. Why? Because the director is from Arizona. And so I got to learn a lot more about how he was able to put this film together. His name's Luca Patruno. He's got a pretty inspiring story with just even his schooling to get to this point to put together a film. And there was a lot of strife they went through, a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks to even get this film off the ground at all. But to actually have this feature film debut, his directorial debut on Prime Video and Apple TV is pretty incredible. And he's already got another movie in the works that they're also filming here in Arizona. So this is really cool. The Vindicator, Luca Patruno, he's going to tell you all about how they made this movie, what went into it, and why it's so important. The one part I will say, as a little tease before you get into this, they actually studied interviews with serial killers to learn more about how their actors would portray this in the movie. I thought that was super fascinating. Here's my interview with Luca Patruno. I am joined by Luca Patruno, the director of The Vindicator, this new horror film about a true crime podcast that piqued my interest immediately when I saw it. And this is your directorial debut with a feature film on Prime Video and Apple TV. That is huge. And I'm curious how you went from, studying film directing to now getting to this point. It's not easy.
No, not at all. And there's really no one path to get there. Like, they don't really teach you that in school because nobody really has that answer. It was graduating in 2017 from Chapman University, which right now I think is number 4 in the country, thanks to probably Stranger Things because the Duffer Brothers went there. But yeah, then it was a lot of cold calls, cold emails, not getting a lot of responses. And then you get projects kind of off the ground. And I actually got an agent like a year into living in LA, and that didn't really work out because then you're like, oh, now all the doors are going to open, and they really don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, then it's like you get a little further, then falls through. You get a little further the next time, falls through. So me and my writing partner on the Vindicator, Cameron, we were like, all right, we have to maybe do this ourselves, and how do we make that happen? So we wrote this kind of more contained movie, and we got interest from a group of investors, and they excuse me, had hired me to write a script. That one fell through. So they were like, okay, we have this money. How do we, we want to make a movie. It's COVID. And then we were like, well, we have this script. They loved it. And actually 2 months before we shot the film, they pulled out. And so
Oh God.
it was like, me and him were very like kind of cautiously optimistic. How do we, like, we were there, but it's like until you're on set, till contracts are signed, nothing's official. And so kind of almost back to square one. And for me, it was like, okay, the plan now is what's the minimum I can make this movie for? Go work, save it, and just go make it. You got to get your first one done. No one's going to think you can make a feature until you do it. And so that was the plan. I got a job doing photography at a fashion company out in Glendale, and guaranteed hours, guaranteed pay. It was great. Took about 7 months to save that money. But yeah, then along the way, actually, just a gentleman that my dad had known from maybe like the 70s, that he went to college with his brother. He had just happened to move out here recently to Arizona, and was like, I love horror. Let me look at this script, and I'm interested in investing. I'm interested in trying this kind of path out. And he just kind of came along and was like, what do you need to make this movie? And I was like, well, ideally more than I already have. And he just came through for us and was just very hands off, but very supportive, and just like, hey, just go make your movie. And it ended up being just something really a lot bigger and a lot more exciting than we thought it could be.
Well, and the plot is fascinating to probably a lot of people. I've watched about half of it. I'm notoriously not a horror person. I love true crime, but I cannot do horror films. It is a weird thing about me. But the plot kind of caters to a lot of different people. It's not just horror and gore. This is kind of a mystery. It's got that true crime podcast aspect to it that people are fascinated about. It's got a serial killer, a mysterious serial killer. How did you come up with this kind of theme, this plot? And then did it take any directions you didn't expect it to?
So with coming up with it, me and Cameron, again, my writing partner, like at the time, especially during the lockdowns with COVID, true crime has always been kind of like a big thing, but then podcasts really started to become, super popular. And we were like, okay, how do we take this kind of phenomena and this medium and translate that into a feature film? Because, we'd seen like some other projects. I think Only Murders in the Building was like kind of starting to come out. The Chucky show, the Chucky show was starting to, they had like kind of like a podcast, but it wasn't like necessarily like sit down and watch a podcast sequence. It was just like kind of like little moments of the show or the movie. And we're like, okay, well, this will help it be contained. And it also, but then it was like, okay, how do we make this compelling? And, we also don't have the budget, because Saw is a very big inspiration of the movie. But it was like, we don't have the budget to like cut people's limbs off, like right off the bat. Like we got to kind of build up to it. And so it became more of this psychological horror than anything. And so that was like kind of like a way to not mask the low budget, but kind of like play up what I think is more scary, is like kind of not really knowing the people that you're closest to. And, like you think the danger is outside, but the danger and the horror is like kind of really inside there, just with them, amongst them.
Right.
So yeah, that was like the big thing of that. And then, go ahead.
So you almost let a lower budget be used to your advantage with kind of a different way of storytelling, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just, especially coming in from the horror world, I've even in writing, I just noticed like telling a more contained story is also like almost more difficult than telling like a big blockbuster.
Sure.
Just writing it, because then it's like, how do I make this one location with 3 actors like engaging for 90 minutes? And so that was like something that we really tried to make sure we did, especially in the long podcast sequences. It's like, all right, they're talking for it's talking heads for 10 minutes or whatever it is. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be engaging. Obviously, it's got to move the story and the characters like forward.
Yeah.
So that was like a big challenge like in itself. And then I think the biggest thing I kind of took away of how it shifted was I'm a big fan of movies that are like Seven and The Strangers and Silence of the Lambs, where it's like just like a straight kind of dark, serious movie the entire time tonally. And then when we were shooting and kind of talking with the actors and seeing how the 3 of them, their chemistry was just so great on and off screen, it almost became a little bit more lighthearted and not comedic, but like they had their moments of being
Right.
comedic. And I was like, okay, like let's lean into that versus try to make it something that like it's maybe not wanting to be.
Right.
And so that was kind of like something to adapt to and adjust with. But I think it worked out.
It did work out. I mean, I noticed that too, just watching it. They seem to have pretty good chemistry. Where did you find these actors? I mean, with the budget that you had, how did you go about casting? How did you go about finding set locations? I mean, I know you were living in LA, but you're from Arizona, and this was mostly shot in Arizona?
It's all shot in Arizona. Yeah.
whole
So
thing.
after COVID, I had moved back to Arizona. So then with the main character Ava, that was like almost a 3 or 4 month process, because we had over like 3,000 girls submit to that role. And so it started at 3,000. I think the first round of like self tapes was like 300. Then we cut it down to like 50, 20. And so there was a few rounds, and just kind of seeing the big thing that I look for is, okay, obviously you can act. Let's get through that barrier. Can you act in different emotional ranges? And then with horror, because ideally people aren't like scared as much in real life, so it's not like a normal reaction or a normal way to act for somebody. So I usually do like scream tests, and to see if people can not only scream in terror but scream in like pain.
Yeah.
And then actually, so then the other 2 characters, the 2 male leads, the podcasters, we actually had kind of a big name attached for one of those characters up until a week before we shot the movie, and then they pulled out, just stuff with SAG and kind of like stuff. So it was really, and so then David, who plays Tommy, he was recommended through a friend, and I sent him the script I think Saturday, and we were starting to film the next
Oh my God.
Wednesday. And he got back to me. He loved the script and everything. And then Mac, who the long-haired gentleman who plays Bradley, I had worked with him on other projects before, so I kind of had already knew him. Actually, funny enough, the other actor who was supposed to play that character, he was like kind of having some scheduling conflicts. So I reached out to Mac like maybe a week or 2 before, and was like, hey, like it might not happen, but there's some scheduling conflicts. I just want you to look at this role if you're available. And then it turned out that it once we lost the name actor, the other actor was also SAG, so he couldn't do it anymore. So I was like, hey, Mac, that role is actually open. So yeah, we had to cast 2 leads under a week, and it worked out.
Well, for you personally, thinking about the true crime genre and wanting to put this together, I mean, do serial killers fascinate you? Was there something that you wanted to convey in the kind of mood and the theme and through the acting to people who are watching it?
Yeah, they definitely really do fascinate me. I mean, just from a horror perspective, but also a couple of my dad's friends, including the one that ended up being a big investor, they had like run-ins with Gacy back in the day, because we're all from Chicago, and like Casey did his thing in the 70s in Chicago. And so those things kind of like fascinate me. And just also, what about the mind of a serial killer do we try to pick at and fixate on, and what makes it so fascinating to us? And I really wanted to create kind of like a clever fun serial killer that has this kind of presence on and off screen. And so like John Doe from Seven was a really big inspiration, Kevin Spacey's character, just because like how much they build him up off screen.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times when the character actually appears, you're like, I don't know if that's really like the guy you've been hyping up this whole time. Like, but yeah, so to kind of give this like lore and find out what has been done, what hasn't been done, read actual stories and cases from like people like Dahmer and Bundy and Gacy, and how those guys kind of like, and watch a lot of interviews with them to see how they talk, their mannerisms, how calm they kind of are in interviews.
So you actually studied the way that they communicated.
Yeah, no, definitely. And same with Anna, who plays Ava. She really looked at a lot of that too, because she wanted to, as her character is like a criminology student, and she wants to hunt serial killers and track them. Like she really like dove really deep into all of that as well. So it really, isn't the most fun and like bright and happy research, but
sure,
yeah.
But it was smart for the theme itself. How'd you come up with the name The Vindicator?
So we went through a lot of different names. Like we knew we wanted it to be kind of this like questionnaire type of game, so we went with like that, and I was like, that's too much like the Riddler. And then we like, there's a part in the movie where like they talk about like the definition of vindicate, and I was like, why don't we try that? And so that's kind of like more or less how it was born. It was like, let's use a thesaurus, and but something that like is kind of like a real name that somebody in the paper might call him.
Right.
Like Jigsaw is like he didn't name himself that, as like the newspapers and the media like kind of named him.
Kind of like the Zodiac. Well, the Zodiac, I guess, named himself.
Zodiac kind of named himself too. So there's like kind of that. Yeah.
But you start to get
the
Night
like,
Stalker.
Yeah, and so kind of like based off or going off the Zodiac thing is like, how far can we push or have this character like push the limits and push the boundaries of like, all right, like calling cards or just like calling in, like, how far can I like really push somebody to find or challenge somebody to find out who I am.
Yeah.
But, it's part of their fun and it's part of their game.
So interesting. So when you did all of this, you come up with all of this, you get the actors, you get an investor to put it all together, and you shoot it, and you guys edit it. Somebody edits it. I imagine at that point, though, you didn't know for a bit where it was going to land in terms of a platform.
Mm-hmm.
So how'd you navigate that? How did it get to Prime and Apple TV?
Yeah, so we actually had we were signed with a different distribution company before we even shot the movie, because at that time it was just my money that we were going to put into it. So for me, indie films, and especially first time films, doing a lot of research, a lot of them just don't see the light of day. Either they run out of money, they run out of energy, they just don't find distribution, whatever the case was. So when we got the offer, and I tried to do research, I was like, all right, what things to look for? You don't want to just sign with the first person that offers you a deal, and just look at what the questions to ask for. And so I was like, okay, that's taken care of. I can just go make the movie. And the con side of that is, after you make the movie, then you start getting other offers and you're like, dang, maybe I should have taken that.
Sure.
One.
Yeah.
And then just after it's edited and stuff, just in the process, it just wasn't a good marriage with that company. And the people that they were partnered with were kind of going through like a buyout, and we were able to sever ties. And so we actually went back to a company that had made us an offer like a few months before. And I was like, this is the offer I want to take. One of our producers, Chris Mahar, he had worked with them on stuff, so I trusted it, and they have a good kind of catalog and track record. So yeah, they were able to help us out and get it there. And I think it's going to be there for about 90 days, and then on to the next set of platforms. And
right. And I imagine too, I mean, I know that there's usually like a time frame that it's on each platform.
Yeah.
But I assume too, even after that, depending, you guys could also put it on YouTube or places where people can access it and watch it too.
Right, exactly. Because then it becomes, okay, here's how it performed.
Sure.
On this. Now we can either renegotiate or re-up, or renew it on these different platforms, or take it to a bigger one maybe and be like, hey, here's how it's performed.
Sure.
Can we maybe get it on this platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How exciting is it for you to see this, to see it on a big platform, to see people, watching it, being excited about it, and just kind of like, pulling back that layer and kind of behind the curtains here, there's so much that goes into it, the highs and the lows. And you guys, you faced several obstacles to get here. So how does it feel now getting to kind of see it in all its glory in front of people?
It's a big weight off my chest. Like even when the movie was like finished editing, and then we screened it at a couple of theaters just to kind of get some buzz going, but also get some feedback and some eyes on it. Even at that point, you're like, okay, like, yes, I just watched it on a big screen, but like it's still not out to the public, and so there's all these kind of anxieties and just like I just you want to find the right company to kind of take you on this next part of the journey. And because that's the next kind of scale. Is like, you want it. The whole goal of making a movie is to get people to see it and have people see it. And
Right.
so until it was there, it was never there. So now it actually like came out while I was directing my next movie, and so it was kind of like this weird, almost full circle, and kind of look how far ideally I've come, like even since then. And yeah, it's been a really good time.
Well, I can't wait to see where you are in like 5 years from now too. Just to have this success in a short amount of time is pretty incredible. For people who are going to watch it, just a little blurb, what can they expect and what do you hope that they get out of it if they're viewing it for the first time?
Mm-hmm. I guess don't expect it to be soft. No, but I think it's just more of a look of, this is kind of like a older school, like kind of slow burn type of a film. And we wanted to really make it like a character study, and that the horror is more about people than it is like jump scares or supernatural or even the serial killer. And you might not know, even if you've known somebody or dating somebody for many years, like you still might not know everything about them. And then just on like the filmmaking side, like I'm a big advocate of just going out and doing it. There's so many platforms out there, which, yes, it makes things oversaturated, and how do you choose when there's so many platforms, so much content on all these platforms? But that also means there's that much more opportunity to go out and get it out somewhere.
Yeah.
And a good movie, regardless where it is, the budget, what platform it's on, like it'll be found somewhere or somehow, even if it takes a lot longer.
Totally. Where can people find you if they want to follow your journey or follow what you're working on? I know you said you're working on your next film already. Mm-hmm. What is that, and where can they kind of follow your journey?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find, just like on social media. But yeah, then the next movie is called Hack Job, and it's a slasher movie. And that one's got its own Instagram. I think it's just Hack Job Film. But we have kind of scaled up a lot, which has been really nice. Like the first movie is very contained. In this movie, we've shot all over Globe, Arizona.
Oh yeah.
We shot about 18 days so far, and we have, I think, about another week left. And we actually have, I know you're not a horror fan, but the Terrifier movies are like a big in the horror world. So we have an actress, Alexa Blair Robertson, who was a big role in the third one. She's our lead. And then Stacey Nelkin from Halloween 3 back in the 80s. She's also like a kind of a big role in it. But yeah, it's really, really exciting. I'm excited to make a slasher movie, and we've just like really kind of upped everything, and it's come with its own set of challenges. And
totally.
So yeah, we're almost done shooting that one.
I take it that one's not about true crime or a podcast.
That one is not about true crime. No, that one follows like a mass killer who goes from small town to small town, and he's kind of fighting his own drug war. So he's kind of in his eyes, a vigilante, but from the town's perspective, because they don't know why he's killing or who he's targeting, he's a slasher. And so it becomes like really a kind of like a moral questioning of like who's really the monster here and who's not. So yeah, it's a really, I think, a really good story, and the performances so far have been really, really good. So
well, and if people don't know too, Globe is a pretty small mining town that's known to be haunted, so it's a perfect place to shoot a film.
Perfect place, and it doesn't look like Phoenix. So I mean, it's a
not.
really, really cool town. They love like film And we've shot a bunch of stuff up there, and yeah, so it's a really great place to like go film if you want to go shoot something. And it's not too far away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Luca, thanks so much for joining us and, you know, sharing a little bit more about the process and everything like that. I know if people want to watch The Vindicator, they can go to Prime, they can go to Apple TV. I found it really interesting, and I'm not a horror person, so I hope everybody goes and watches it. And I appreciate you for coming on the show and sharing more about it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. And our thanks to Luca for that. Super interesting. You can always catch it on Prime Video and Apple TV right now if you are a horror buff. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in tonight. You can watch our segments after the fact, too, on YouTube, both Arizona's Family YouTube page and my own. Catch us on social media, on Instagram and TikTok as well. We'll post different little clips from the show itself. Appreciate you guys for joining me live, and I'll see you next week for True Crime AZ Live. Good night.